In this section, we'll look at the fall of Japan in 1945, going up to VJ Day, Victory of Japan Day, in the late summer, early fall of 1945. But first, I should note that in late October 1944, the Americans destroyed what remained of Japan's air force in the Battle of Leyte Gulf, which was considered by some to be the largest naval battle of the war. The Japanese lost 26 warships, including one of their last aircraft carriers. 4 months later, beginning in February 1945 and sort of continuing into March 1945, the U.S. captured the strategic island of Iwo Jima. Man, the fighting was some of the bloodiest in the entire Pacific War, the battle becoming famous in Marine Corps lore. The battle demonstrated that, again, the Japanese defenders would fight to the death even as their eventual defeat appeared clear. Of the 21,000 Japanese soldiers on the island, only several hundred were taken prisoner. The battle also produced another important event, the iconic photo of World War II, the flag raising after the battle. The photo was actually the second flag raising and became the basis for the Iwo Jima Monument in Washington, D.C. The final major battle was over the large island of Okinawa. It's only 350 miles south of Japan. And the battle from March and June 1945 was still going on when VE Day, Victory in Europe Day, occurred. It was considered, Okinawa was considered critical because it had a key launching pad, airport for the invasion of Japan. And it yet again demonstrated how ferocious the Japanese would fight. Surrendering was, they believed, dishonorable, and death for many was considered better than dishonor. As the end approached, the Japanese began launching kamikaze attacks on American ships. Young men were given a religious ceremony and taught to fly planes into ships, often even not even given the fuel to return or the training even to land. By the end of the war, there were almost 4,000 individual kamikaze attacks, of which 1 of 5 actually hit a ship. In July 1945, there was the last of the wartime conferences, and this one was much different, not only in who attended, but what took place there. The conference was in Potsdam, near Berlin, and it was another Big Three conference, but the British had voted Churchill out of office and replaced him with the Labour Party's Clement Attlee. And of course, FDR died, so Truman was there for the United States. And Truman wasn't as diplomatic as FDR, and he was furious that Stalin had not allowed free elections in the Eastern European countries that the Soviets had liberated, just as Stalin had promised to do so in February at the Yalta Conference. Now, other than agreeing on a few logistical items for the administration of Germany and the trial of the Nazis at Nuremberg, there really was no major agreement. It was an icy, unproductive meeting, and it was pretty much a sign that the Grand Alliance of World War II was over with and the Cold War had begun. At Potsdam, Truman learned that the Manhattan Project had successfully detonated an atomic bomb. The Manhattan Project was a project to build a nuclear bomb. All major combatants in the war had been working towards this goal, and when the American entered the war, they had started a secret project. It was called the Manhattan Project because many of the scientists were from Columbia University, which is in New York City, Manhattan. But it had been placed out in Los Alamos to give it some secrecy. Indeed, when Germany had collapsed, many of the German scientists were brought over to work on the American project. And while Truman was at Potsdam, he learned that the Manhattan Project had successfully detonated a test bomb, and they had 2 more bombs that could be used. And so perhaps it's obvious that Truman felt a little confident at be a little more bellicose with Stalin at Potsdam. Critical to the success of the Manhattan Project was its leader, J. Robert Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer later, after the war, became head of America's first Atomic Energy Commission. He even later became regretful of his role in making the bomb and argued for international controls on nuclear power. As a matter of fact, later on during McCarthyism of the Red Scare after the war, the FBI even began to investigate him as he criticized, as he worried about the use of the bomb in the Cold War. The U.S. had 2 workable bombs called Fat Man and Little Boy, one using uranium and the other one plutonium. At Potsdam, the Allies had issued a declaration telling Japan that it should surrender, reform its government, and give up all conquered territories, or the alternative, quote, suffer the prompt and utter destruction. The civilian Japanese leaders initially agreed, but then, of course, the hardcore military refused. When the Japanese didn't surrender, America prepared to drop the first of its bombs. It selected the pilot Paul Tibbets to fly a B-29 bomber, which Tibbets had named for his mother, Enola Gay. On Monday, August 6, 1945, at approximately 8:15 in the morning, the Enola Gay dropped Little Boy on the industrial city of Hiroshima. An estimated 80,000 people died instantly from an urban population of just over 300,000. Somewhere between 100 and 150,000 people later died of injury and radiation, so the casualty list was well above 200,000. The bomb completely destroyed 70% of the city's buildings. On the same day, Truman announced to the world that if the Japanese still did not surrender, they could expect, quote, a rain of ruin from the air, the likes of which has never been seen on this earth, unquote. In later years, historians have debated why Truman decided to drop the bomb, or even if the bomb was necessary. Given the sure cost in lives an invasion would have had, Truman undoubtedly hoped that after the first bomb, the Japanese would have surrendered, and it would in the end, cost fewer lives for everyone than an invasion. When the Japanese still did not respond, Truman ordered Fat Man dropped on another industrial city, Nagasaki, on August 9, 1945, the same day that the Soviet Union finally declared war on Japan. Up to 40,000 people died instantly by the 1,000-degree fireball, with another 40,000 or so dying of injury. It was Fat Man was a little bit more powerful than Little Boy, but because of Nagasaki's more uneven terrain, the death tolls were fewer. On August 14th, 1945, Emperor Hirohito and the civilian leadership finally convinced the military leaders to accept the terms of the so-called Potsdam Declaration: unconditional surrender, reform of the government, and the surrender of all conquest. The announcement was broadcast on radio, one of the first time many Japanese citizens had ever heard the emperor's voice. Of course, Hirohito was considered a deity. A number of Japanese most hardcore soldiers committed harikiri, or suicide, upon learning of the surrender. On September 1st, the Allied fleet entered Tokyo Bay. Soon afterward, on September 2nd, the Japanese foreign minister and a representative of the Imperial General Staff signed the official articles of surrender aboard the battleship Missouri. General Douglas MacArthur and representatives of the Allied powers accepted on behalf of their respective governments. Once again, celebrations broke out. Americans celebrated VJ Day, Victory on Japan Day, on September 2nd, 1945, the day of the official signing. To the British and others, however, they celebrated VJ Day on August 14th, the day of Hirohito's radio announcement. On September 2nd, in New York's Times Square, a photographer snapped a quick photo of a sailor who had just grabbed a nearby nurse and kissed her. The photographer didn't get their names, but when the photo was published in Life magazine, it quickly became yet another iconic image of World War II. The identity of the two people was finally uncovered decades later, and the two met for the first time, other than, of course, their famous kiss. This concludes the section on the war conclusion against Japan in 1945.